The last time all three of my children were under my roof, they smiled like strangers and left like thieves. That Sunday dinner still burns in my chest, not from the marinara sauce, but from the bitterness I swallowed with every forced laugh. I raised them with love. They showed up with pens. Now, they want my house. Before I forget who they are, tell me where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next, you won't want to miss. The smell of burnt garlic clung to the curtains like regret. I stared at the small stain on the beige carpet near the dining table, the one Thomas left years ago with his muddy cleats. I never cleaned it fully. Part of me thought it was sweet then. A little piece of my son left behind. Now it just looked like dirt. I heard the front door creak open. "Hi, Mom!" 3 voices, layered with false warmth. Emily's was the highest, a chirpy trill with edges that used to soothe but now scraped. Nathan followed with a nod, his cologne arriving before he did. Musky, expensive. And Thomas, the youngest, came last, like always. Sunglasses indoors, smiling too wide. "I made your favorite," I said, forcing my voice into something hopeful. "Spaghetti and meatballs? Homemade marinara?" I looked into their eyes. None of them remembered that. None of them cared. We sat. The wooden chairs groaned beneath us, old joints echoing mine. I served them each a plate, hands trembling just a little. Maybe from the pot, maybe not. "So," Emily began, dabbing her mouth with a cloth napkin she brought herself. "We've been talking, and we think it's time we, made some plans." Nathan cleared his throat. "For the future, for your security, for your peace of mind," Thomas added, flashing that damn grin. My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "What kind of plans?" Emily reached into her purse. That purse, the red one with the gold buckle I gave her last Christmas. She didn't even remember. She slid a folder across the table. Cream-colored. Too formal. Too final. "It's just a simple transfer," she said. "We spoke to someone. If you sign the house over to us now, it'll make things easier. For you. For all of us," Nathan added, staring directly at me, eyes colder than I remembered. Thomas leaned forward, elbows on the table, unbothered. Just in case, before things get confusing. "You've been forgetting things lately, haven't you?" My stomach dropped. There it was. The line, the dig, the knife behind the smile. I laughed. It cracked. "So I'm losing it now, am I?" "No one said that," Emily rushed. "But we just want to be prepared." "For when you don't remember who we are," Thomas said, grinning. He thought he was being funny. He didn't notice my hand shaking beneath the table. Silence. The room was too warm. The sauce too acidic. My throat burned. I stared at the folder, the pen resting on top like a loaded gun. "You think I'm that far gone?" I whispered. Nathan sighed. "We're trying to help. By taking my house." Emily flinched. "Mom, I buried your father in this house," I snapped. "I changed your diapers on that couch. I held you all when you had fevers, fought off monsters you imagined under your beds. This house isn't just wood and brick. It's my whole life." More silence. This time, tight and sharp. Thomas stood. "Let's not make this dramatic, okay? You've always said you didn't want to be a burden." That word. Burden. My fork dropped, hit the plate like thunder. I looked at all 3 of them. My children. My blood. And I saw strangers with keys in their pockets and dollar signs in their eyes. "I'm not signing anything," I said. Nathan stood too. "You will, eventually." Emily's eyes darted toward him. "Nathan," he cut her off. "She will. She just needs time." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My throat had closed. They left an hour later, barely touched their food, didn't even pretend to say, "Love you," at the door. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I sank into the chair, the one with the tiny tear on the armrest, the one I used to rock them in when they couldn't sleep. I sat there for a long time, staring at the folder they left behind. The pen was still there. I picked it up. I snapped it in half. And that's when I knew. They weren't just trying to take my house. They were trying to erase me. And I wasn't going to let them. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. I sat in the stiff vinyl chair, my purse clutched tight in my lap like a lifeline. The clock ticked too loud. My name, Margaret Hill, was called by a young nurse who didn't look old enough to drive, let alone deliver the kind of news I was bracing for. I smiled anyway. That's what women like me do. Smile. Stay calm. Make it easier for everyone else. Inside the doctor's office, the walls were an uninspired beige, the kind that makes you feel small, like wallpaper in a forgotten motel. I focused on a framed photo of a mountain range, a poor attempt at comfort. The doctor, Dr. Keating, shuffled in with a file and eyes too soft for the words I knew were coming. He sat. He cleared his throat. "It's early signs, Margaret. Mild cognitive impairment, possibly the beginning stages of Alzheimer's. It hit like ice water, not a slap, colder than that, slower, like drowning without thrashing." I tried to speak but felt my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. Finally, I managed, "I've just been misplacing words, names. That happens with age." "It does," he said gently, "but combined with the test results, it suggests a pattern." A pattern. That word, like I was becoming a statistic. I looked down at my hands, my wedding ring still there, even though Henry was not. My fingers had started to look like my mother's, thinner, lined. I wondered if she felt this way when she started forgetting my birthday. Is it definite? It's not definitive, not yet, but I'd recommend we begin monitoring. Maybe look into legal preparations while your cognition is still strong. Legal preparations. I felt like I was being quietly escorted out of my own life. He handed me a pamphlet. I didn't read the title, just tucked it into my purse like a shameful receipt. As I stood to leave, I noticed something through the sliver of the open door. A movement. I took a step closer, squinting. Thomas, my youngest, the one who used to cry when I left for work. He was outside the door, standing with his back against the wall, his face half hidden behind his phone. I froze. He wasn't supposed to be here. He didn't notice me. Or maybe he did and didn't care. He was scrolling, laughing at something, standing outside the room where I was just told my mind might be dissolving. I stepped out. "Thomas?" He startled, looked up, just a second too late to make it look natural. "Oh, hey," he said, stuffing the phone into his jacket. "I was just, wanted to check in, see how it went." "How did you know I was here?" He hesitated. "Emily mentioned it." I felt my chest tighten. That wasn't true. I hadn't told any of them. I didn't want to worry them. Or maybe I didn't want to give them ammunition. "I didn't think you'd be interested," I said. His face changed then, just for a flash, like he'd realized I wasn't quite as gone as he hoped. "I'm always interested, Mom," he said smoothly. "We just want what's best for you." That phrase again. I walked past him without answering, the pamphlet in my purse rustling like a whisper. When we got to the car, he offered to drive. "No," I said. He tried to insist. I said no. My voice had an edge he wasn't used to. He backed off. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors before he could say anything else. The ride home was silent, just the humming of old tires on cracked pavement. I thought of how he used to ask me to sing along to the radio. Now he sat in the passenger seat, checking his phone, probably texting his siblings. By the time I pulled into the driveway, something had shifted inside me. They weren't circling me like worried children. They were vultures, and I realized something chilling. They weren't waiting for me to lose my mind. They were hoping I would. As he got out of the car and mumbled a goodbye, I stayed behind. I watched him walk away, tall and careless, the same boy I once held through a fever, now grown into a man I didn't recognize. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, and in that moment I knew this wasn't about care. It wasn't about love. It was about control, and they weren't going to get it. Not without a fight. I found the documents by accident. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the blue envelope, the one where I kept the last birthday card Henry gave me. I hadn't read it in a while, and that day I needed to. I needed his voice in my head again. The soft way he used to call me Mags, how he always added those ridiculous little hearts in his handwriting like a teenager. Instead, I found a folder tucked behind my file cabinet drawer. One of those old metal ones that sticks halfway open and always pinches your fingers if you're not careful. This folder was new, too new, sharp corners, no dust. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. Legal papers, property transfer forms, a copy of the deed to my house, my name, my signature. Except I didn't remember signing them. The room felt smaller, hotter. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, papers spilling onto the quilt. I stared at the signature. It looked like mine, but not quite. The curve of the M was too neat. The tail of the G didn't loop the way I always looped it. It wasn't mine, and I knew it. They had forged my name. All three of them had access to my files, my mail. All three had watched me for months, treating me like I was already fading. and now they were erasing me, one line at a time. I grabbed the phone. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it twice before I found Emily's name. I called. She didn't pick up. I didn't bother with Thomas. I called Nathan. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Mom." My voice came out tighter than I meant. "What is this? The deed transfer. Who did this?" A pause. Just one heartbeat too long. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. Look, we were trying to help. It's just a precaution. You've been forgetting things. We didn't want anything to happen legally if what? Nathan? If I become useless? If I forget your names? That's not what I said. It's what you meant." He sighed. "We'll talk about it later, okay?" "No, we'll talk about it now." "Mom." I hung up. I couldn't feel my hands. Just heat. In my chest. In my face. Behind my eyes. I pressed both palms to the sides of my head, like I could physically hold my brain together. A forged signature. A theft in slow motion. They were trying to make me disappear before I was even gone. I spent the rest of the day moving through the house like a ghost. My steps echoed. Every photograph felt like a lie. That picture of Thomas at age 7, grinning with chocolate on his face. He used to cry when I left the room. Now he was conspiring with his siblings to take what was mine. I sat down in Henry's old recliner. The leather was cracked, the armrest molded to his shape. I ran my hand along the seam. The hum of the fridge in the kitchen was the only sound in the house. And for the first time in my life, I felt afraid of my own children. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house felt like betrayal. Every shadow a reminder that I wasn't safe in the place I built with my own 2 hands. At dawn, I made coffee. Black, bitter, the way Henry liked it. I went back to the file cabinet and took every legal paper I had. The mortgage, the insurance, the will from 20 years ago. I sat at the kitchen table and read each one, line by line, like a woman searching for her own name in a world that was erasing her. And I made a decision. If they wanted war, I'd give them one. But I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't even accuse. No, I would outthink them. They forgot who raised them, and they were about to remember. The walls in this house know too much. They've absorbed years of lullabies, whispered apologies, silent screams, and now, secrets, ugly ones, the kind that rot in the corners when no one's looking. It was just after p.m. when I heard it. Voices, muffled, but familiar. The creak of the floorboards told me they were upstairs, in the guest room, the one I used to keep full of stuffed animals and faded quilts. I crept out of my room, barefoot, one hand braced on the banister. The wood was cold, the air sharp with the scent of Emily's overdone lavender perfume. My robe dragged just a little against the floor. I didn't care. They didn't know I was awake. I stopped just outside the door, the one left open just a sliver too wide. Their voices filtered through. Thomas, laughing. "We'll put it on the market before the end of summer. The realtor said the neighborhood's peaking." "Emily, we need to act fast before she changes her mind. Or before she—" Nathan cut her off. "She's not changing her mind. She signed the damn thing. We just need to file it." Silence. Then a laugh. Low. Cold. "She doesn't even remember signing it," Nathan added. "And if she does, we'll say she's confused. Who's going to believe her over the 3 of us?" My breath caught. They were planning this. All of it. Deliberate. Coordinated. Cruel. Not confused concern. Not misguided protection. This was theft, camouflaged as love. I backed away slowly. My heel hit a loose board, and it let out a soft click. I froze. The voices stopped. I didn't breathe. Then Thomas said, too loud, "Did you hear that?" I turned, moved quickly, quietly, down the stairs, into the kitchen. The chair scraped as I pulled it out and sat, just as Emily came down with that fake sweet smile barely glued to her face. "Hey, Mom," she said. Too light. "You okay?" I looked up slowly, straight into her eyes. "Couldn't sleep," I said. Behind her, Nathan hovered on the stairs. Thomas lingered behind him like a shadow. "Something on your mind?" Emily asked, pulling the kettle from the stove. She wasn't making tea. She was buying time. I shrugged. Just thinking about the house. The pause in her hands was microscopic, but I saw it. "Oh? I've lived here for 40 years, I said, gently tapping the table. "Every crack in this floorboard has a memory in it. I don't think I could ever leave." Thomas entered now, trying too hard to sound casual. "Well, it's just a house, Mom." "No," I said quietly. It's my house. The silence was thick. Nathan shifted his weight. Emily looked down. You all forget, I added, that this place was paid off with your father's overtime, with my second job at the diner, with skipped vacations, with sacrifices you never even knew about. Emily tried to interject, but I raised a hand. Surprised myself, honestly, by how steady it was. I might be forgetful, yes. I might lose words, lose names, lose moments. But what I won't lose is my instinct, and right now it's screaming at me. None of them spoke. I stood slowly. My knees cracked, my spine ached, but I met their eyes one by one. When the time comes, I said, you'll remember this conversation. Nathan's jaw tightened. Are you threatening us? I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. No, Nathan. I'm remembering. I walked away, my feet steady against the cold tile. They had tried to hide their betrayal behind closed doors, but they forgot something vital. This is still my house, and it hears everything. The lawyer looked like he should have been on a golf course, not behind a desk. Khakis, loafers, smiled too wide, talked too fast. Nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Hill, he said, extending a hand I didn't want to shake. His office smelled like stale coffee and laminate. Cheap, efficient, no soul. Call me Margaret, I said, sinking into the stiff leather chair. My bones were tired, but not weak. He glanced at the file in front of him, then at me. I understand you're here about some confusion regarding property transfers? Something like that. He smiled again, but this time it faltered. I wasn't here for small talk. I'd also like to revisit any assets from my father's estate, I added. His name was Edward Harris, passed in, and that caught him. He blinked. That's a while back. You believe there's something unresolved? I don't believe. I know. He nodded slowly, fingers already moving across his keyboard. Give me a moment. We'll pull the file from archives. I waited. 10 minutes, then 15. I stared at a picture frame on his desk. His family, I assumed. Wife, 2 daughters, a golden retriever. Everyone smiling. Everyone pretending things last forever. They don't. Ah, he said finally. Here we go. Looks like your father did leave behind a fund, set up through a private trust. It was designated to pass directly to his daughter, you, upon your mother's death. I sat up straighter. She passed in, I said. He nodded, lips pressed into a tight line. Yes, so the transfer should have occurred then. Should have? He hesitated, scrolled again, then frowned. Well, it shows here that the fund was claimed, in full, signed for, by me? He didn't answer right away, just flipped the screen slightly toward me. My name, my father's trust, my inheritance, and a signature. Not mine, not even close. Everything in my body went still. Who? I whispered. He scanned again. There's a notation here. It was authorized by a Nathan Hill, my son. My son took my father's money 12 years ago. I stared at the screen. A single line of black ink, a fake name, a false moment. He didn't even tell me, didn't ask, didn't even pretend. I felt my throat close, like grief trying to claw its way out. Are you okay, Mrs. Hill? No, but I nodded. I walked out of that office with a copy of everything, clutched the papers to my chest like a lifeline. My car felt foreign when I sat inside, the air stale, the steering wheel rough beneath my palms. 12 years. He'd been sitting on this secret for 12 years, watching me struggle to fix the roof, watching me clip grocery coupons, watching me sell my jewelry when Henry got sick, and he said nothing. That night, I sat in the living room, lights off, house silent. I thought about my father, about how proud he was the day I bought this house with Henry, how he said, "You're doing better than we ever did, Mags." I thought about how I never asked him for anything, and still, he tried to leave me something, a gesture of love, tucked away for when I'd need it most. Nathan stole that love from me, and didn't even flinch. I sat with the anger, let it fill me. Let it settle. Then I opened a new file on my desk, labeled it, Contingency, because this wasn't about grief anymore. It was war, and I had just found my opening move. I didn't cry, not after the lawyer's office, not after reading the forged documents under the flickering kitchen light, not after discovering that my own son had stolen the last thing my father ever gave me. Tears felt like a luxury, one I couldn't afford anymore. Instead, I began my day at a.m., same as always. Toasted one slice of rye bread, black coffee, no sugar. I sat by the window as I always did, listening to the world breathe before it remembered to rush. But something had shifted. Me. That morning, I picked up the phone, not to call my children, but to call someone else. I found his card inside a kitchen drawer, half buried under expired coupons and broken rubber bands. Matthew Grayson, Esquiros, elder law specialist. He'd visited the community center 2 years ago to talk about wills and trusts. I remembered because no one had taken him seriously. Too young, too thin, too many questions. But I remembered how he looked me in the eye when I asked something, how he didn't talk down, like I wasn't already fading. I dialed. Grayson Law Office, he answered himself. This is Margaret Hill. I need to talk. But it needs to stay quiet. I met him that afternoon in his cramped office above a bookstore, sandwiched between a failing dance studio and a nail salon that always smelled like acetone and oranges. He didn't ask questions right away. He poured tea, listened, let me talk. I told him everything. My diagnosis, the forged deed, the fake signature on my father's trust, the casual cruelty of children who had grown up thinking love was something to trade for real estate. When I finished, he didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, I believe you. And something inside me, some quiet, trembling part, exhaled. Over the next few weeks, I worked with Matthew in secret. We created a new will, transferred assets, re-established power of attorney with ironclad protections, and most importantly, we stripped away every inch of access my children thought they had. One by one, I changed the locks, literal and legal. I learned to speak the language of trust, irrevocable clauses, grantor rights. I asked questions, took notes, understood every single line of what was mine. At home, I said nothing. When Emily dropped by unannounced with a casserole and too much perfume, I smiled and asked about her kids. When Nathan sent a generic text, how's everything going? Mom? I replied with a thumbs-up emoji. And when Thomas asked if I needed help with the bills, I thanked him sweetly and told him I had it all under control. They thought they'd won already, that I was too slow, too fragile, too lost. Let them think it. Let them believe they were dealing with the same woman who ironed their graduation gowns and stayed up all night baking birthday cakes with boxed mix and tired eyes. They didn't know me now. Not this version. This version watched, waited, planned. One night, I sat by the fireplace with a thick binder in my lap. My new will, a quiet weapon. Every page felt like a brick in a fortress no one would breach again. Matthew had even drawn up a letter to accompany the final version. I read it out loud to myself. To my children, you taught me what forgetting feels like. I hope you never forget this. The last thing I did that night was write 3 dates on the back of an old receipt. Each one marked a step, a decision, a silence. They thought I was breaking, but I was building. And soon, they'd see exactly what I'd built, when it was too late to stop it. I sat alone in the garage that night, cross-legged on a crate, the old heater humming softly behind me. Boxes were stacked to the ceiling, memories packed away in cardboard, labeled in Henry's handwriting. Ex-Mass, Emily's art, mags, old work files. Dust floated in the slant of the overhead light like time suspended mid-air. I pulled down the heaviest box. Mags, old work files. Inside, my life before I was just mom. Old business cards, worn notebooks, laminated name tags from the law office I worked at before the kids were born. Back when I had a corner desk and a window and an inbox with my name typed neatly on the label. I had forgotten how much I had given up. Not lost, given, willingly, for them. The garage door groaned as wind pushed against it. A branch scratched the siding. I didn't flinch. I kept reading. Letters I wrote to Henry when he was stationed overseas. A rejection letter from Columbia Law. I had kept it like a scar. A silent reminder. And buried under a folder of tax returns was a small photo, one I hadn't seen in years. Emily in her first dance recital, Nathan with a baseball trophy too big for his little arms, Thomas asleep on my chest, sticky with ice cream. I stared at it for a long time. Then I stood and walked into the kitchen, laid it gently on the table. Next to it, I placed my last heating bill, because it was me who paid that, not them. It was me who worked doubles when Henry got laid off in... It was me who pawned her engagement ring to pay for Nathan's braces. It was me who skipped every vacation for a decade so Emily could go to art school in New York and never once came home for Thanksgiving after. It was me who let Thomas move back in for just a few months after college, and he stayed 2 years without paying rent. I remembered every sacrifice, and not once did they say thank you. When Henry got sick, I didn't ask them for help, not because I didn't need it, but because they were already too busy, too distant, too comfortable letting me carry the weight alone. I cooked, bathed, and held him through every coughing fit, every fall. Every day he forgot his own name, but remembered mine with trembling lips. And after he died, they didn't even stay through the full week. Nathan had a conference. Emily had a gallery opening. Thomas didn't even show. They only remembered me when a lawyer called. Now they hovered like flies around a wound, waiting for me to rot. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I went upstairs, opened my closet, pulled out the brown leather journal I had kept hidden since. Inside were records, receipts, journals of every loan I gave them, every unpaid promise, every missed visit, each one dated and detailed. I wasn't keeping score back then, but now I needed the full picture, because when people rewrite your story, the only way to survive is to make sure your truth is louder than their fiction. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "They think I forgot. I remember everything." The pen shook, but not from weakness, from rage, from clarity, from a fire I thought had died with Henry, but had only gone quiet for a time. The next morning, I got dressed in my Sunday best. Pearls, hair curled, lipstick like armor. I wasn't going to church, I was going to war, and this time, I wouldn't be the one kneeling. The courthouse smelled like dust and bureaucracy, ink, old wood, and quiet resentment. I sat across from Matthew Grayson in a narrow hallway with flickering lights and water stains on the ceiling tiles. He slid a thick folder across the bench toward me. "This," he said softly, "is everything. New will, trust established, durable power of attorney, living directive. You're protected." I ran my fingers over the folder. Smooth, heavy, final. I swallowed hard. "Will they know?" "Eventually," he said. "But not today." "Good. Today wasn't for them." Matthew stood and straightened his tie. "You ready to file?" I looked up at him, then nodded. I was ready the moment they tried to erase me. Back home, I pulled into the driveway and just sat in the car for a while. The house looked the same, but I didn't. There was something sharper in my reflection in the rearview mirror, a squareness to my jaw, an unfamiliar stillness in my eyes, not soft, not sad, just resolved. Inside, I made tea, chamomile. I added honey, not for sweetness, but for steadiness. The house was quiet, a rare moment of calm, but I wasn't naive enough to think it would last. The phone rang just after noon. Thomas. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Hi, Mom." Cheerful, too cheerful. "What do you need, Thomas?" A pause. He laughed. "What makes you think I need something?" "Because you always do." "I was just checking in. Wanted to see how you were feeling." "Fine," I said. "Busy." "Oh, yeah? With what?" He didn't mean it. It wasn't curiosity. It was surveillance. "I've been learning," I said, "about trusts and estate law and how easy it is for someone to commit fraud." Silence. Then, "Is this about the papers?" "Mom, no," I said, voice flat. "This is about me and the fact that you forgot I was still here." He was quiet. Then, "We were just worried." "You weren't worried. You were waiting." I ended the call. The next day, I met Matthew again, this time in his office where we finalized everything. He double-checked the filings, confirmed the security of the trust, every asset now locked down, redirected, and irreversible. My house? No longer in my children's reach. The bank accounts? Protected by layered authorizations they'd never break. My legacy? Now written in stone. On the walk back to my car, I passed a bookstore and stopped in front of the display window. A memoir sat on the shelf. The Silent Women Speak Loudest. I almost laughed. Back home, I stood in the living room and looked around. At the photos, the couch where Thomas used to nap, the fireplace where Emily would hang stockings, the kitchen where Nathan spilled orange juice and cried over college rejection letters. And then I looked at the folder in my hands. Not just paper and ink, but armor. They thought I was weak. They thought memory loss made me disposable. But I remembered something they didn't. I built this family. I held it together. And now I was setting it free. Not for them. For me. It started with cinnamon. The scent drifted through the house like memory. Warm, Sweet, familiar. I hadn't made my apple cobbler in years, not since before Henry got sick, but tonight it was back on the menu. I set the table with my best dishes, the wedding china, white with tiny gold vines along the rim, the set we only used on holidays, and once on the night Henry told me he was dying. Tonight, I would use it for something else. Justice. I lit candles, folded napkins. I even played the old Frank Sinatra record they all used to roll their eyes at. I wanted it to feel nostalgic. I wanted them to believe, for just a moment, that I was slipping back into the woman they thought they could walk all over. They arrived right on time. Emily was first, heels clicking on the hardwood like accusations. Nathan came in behind her, his phone glued to his palm. Thomas brought a six-pack of craft beer like a frat boy at a potluck. "Wow," Emily said, taking in the table. "This looks amazing, Mom." I smiled. "Trying something special," I said. "Thought we could have a nice night, like old times." They relaxed, just a little. We ate, we laughed, or they did anyway. I watched, listened, waited. Halfway through dessert, I stood. "I almost forgot," I said, wiping my mouth with my napkin. "I have something for you all." Emily perked up. Nathan glanced up from his phone. Thomas tilted his head like a puppy. I walked to the sideboard, picked up the envelope, the one with gold trim and thick paper. "I made some updates," I said. "To the will, the house, everything." Emily's smile twitched. "What kind of updates?" Nathan asked, already tense. I took a deep breath. "I've decided to make some changes to how things are divided." Thomas scoffed. "Mom," I cut him off. "No, you listen." They froze, not because I was loud, but because I wasn't. "I know what you did," I said, placing the envelope on the table. "All of you." Their eyes darted to each other, a silent ping-pong of guilt. "I know about the forged documents, about the trust my father left me that Nathan cashed out behind my back. I know about the lawyer you visited, the conversations you thought I didn't hear, the plans you made for this house." Emily's mouth opened, then closed. Nathan's jaw clenched. Thomas stared at his plate. "I may forget names, dates, sometimes why I walk into a room, but I will never forget this." Silence. I slid the envelope across the table. Inside is the updated will. Everything has been placed into a trust, irrevocable, ironclad. My house is no longer yours to fight over. Thomas looked up. "What the hell, Mom? What the hell?" I repeated, voice low. "You forged my name, Thomas. You tried to steal from me." He stood. "You're paranoid." I stood too, calm. "Then sue me," Emily whispered. "Mom, you're being dramatic." "No," I said. "For the first time in decades, I'm being clear." I turned to Nathan. "And you? You stole money meant to protect me, money my father left for me, and you kept it through all the years I struggled, through Dad's illness, through every sacrifice I made. You never once came forward." His face was pale. "I was going to pay you back." "No, you weren't," I said, "and now you won't have the chance." I stepped back. "I'm not leaving you with this house, or my money. I'm not leaving you with anything but the truth." Their chairs scraped back as they stood. Voices rose. I didn't respond. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, let their noise fade behind me. When I returned, they were already halfway out the door, too shocked to yell, too embarrassed to cry. I watched their backs disappear into the dark, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a mother. I felt like a woman reclaiming her name. The letters went out the next morning. 3 envelopes, thick, white, and sealed with a weight far heavier than ink or paper. One for each of them. No ceremony, no warning, no dramatics. I didn't text them, didn't call. They'd done enough talking. Inside each letter was a personal message, handwritten, deliberate, final. Not just a statement of truth, but a reckoning. To Emily, I wrote, "You always spoke of art, beauty, legacy, but when it came to mine, you saw only opportunity. You used my fading memory as a ladder. You stepped on my dignity with designer heels. This house will not be your gallery." To Nathan, I wrote, "You were always the leader, the decision maker, but you made choices for me, not with me. You stole from me before I even knew I was missing something. The trust my father built for me, you spent it on yourself. I hope it bought you everything you thought I didn't need." To Thomas, I wrote, "You used to cry when I left the room. Now you laugh when you leave with pieces of me. You thought being the youngest gave you license to take without giving back. But the boy I held in my arms is gone. I don't recognize this man, and I don't owe him a damn thing. I signed each letter not with Love Mom, but with my full name, Margaret Hill. Not just a mother, a woman, a witness, and now a wall you will never climb again. Then I made one final stop. It was a small office, near the edge of town. Brick building, faded blue awning, St. Eliza's shelter for women. They knew who I was when I walked in. We weren't sure you'd come in person, the director said softly. Her name was June. Wore glasses, no makeup, hands calloused from work. Not luxury. I wanted to, I said. She gestured for me to sit. You've done something extraordinary, Mrs. Hill. I shook my head. No, I'm just correcting a mistake I almost made. They had already started the process. Legal documents filed, property transfer initiated. My house, my sanctuary, my battleground, my prison, was no longer just mine. It would become a safe haven for women like me, women discarded by the very people they'd once lived for. June's eyes watered as she read through the deed. You're saving lives with this. I nodded, but my voice cracked when I said, I just want someone to feel safe in it again. That night I packed a small suitcase, a few clothes, my journal, Henry's last letter, and I left. No fanfare, no goodbye. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, just quiet, mine. The kind of place where you could hear your own thoughts without being told they were fading. I got calls for days. Emily, Nathan, Thomas. Voicemails layered with disbelief, then rage, then guilt dressed as outrage. I didn't respond. The silence was my inheritance to them. Let them sit with it. Let them scream into it. Let them remember it. Because from this point on, their mother didn't just walk away. She walked forward. I didn't expect it to go public. I never imagined my story, my pain, would be printed in black ink on cheap newspaper stock and passed around grocery store lines and waiting rooms. But there it was, front page of the Woodland County Chronicle. Local widow donates home after family tries to seize it. I may forget them, but they'll never forget this. My picture was small in the corner, taken from behind as I handed over the deed to June at the shelter. They hadn't asked for a quote, but they used my words anyway, the ones I wrote in those letters. By the time I'd made my morning tea, the calls started. Reporters, talk show hosts, advocacy groups, strangers. Can we feature your story? Would you be willing to speak at our event? You're an inspiration. Inspiration. A funny word for someone who once sat in a dark kitchen wondering if she was vanishing. The article didn't name my children. Thank God for small mercies. But they knew. Everyone in town knew. And so did they. Emily texted, You made us look like monsters. Nathan emailed, You've ruined our reputations. Thomas? He posted a bitter comment on the Chronicle's website under a fake username. They thought I'd be ashamed, but I wasn't. I was seen, heard, believed. Women came up to me in the grocery store, in the pharmacy, in the parking lot of the bank. Thank you, they'd whisper, for showing us we're not crazy, for showing us we're not alone. One woman, maybe late 60s, touched my hand as we reached for the same can of soup. She looked me in the eye and said, They called me forgetful too, but I remembered enough to lock my bank account before my son drained it. We smiled, and it was enough. The shelter sent updates weekly, photos, stories, progress. The front room, my old living room, was now a reading space. Warm lights, shelves of books, quiet. Women who had nowhere else to go now had a place with my name on the deed, a place built with the bones of my old life and reborn with purpose. I didn't give interviews, I didn't sit on talk shows, but I sent letters to advocacy groups, to lawmakers, to churches and libraries and elder care centers, telling them what happened to me and how often it happens in silence. I called it the quiet theft because that's what it was, a slow erasure, polite, legal, almost invisible, until I refused to vanish. They wanted me quiet, forgetful, grateful for scraps. Instead, I left them with headlines, unanswered calls, and a house full of ghosts they'd never inherit. I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment that night, smaller, yes, but full of light, and brewed another cup of tea. Outside, it rained softly, clean, gentle. I opened the window, let it in, because for the first time in a very long time, I felt clean, too. I stood in front of the mirror that morning and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she looked whole, My silver hair was pulled into a loose twist. My blouse was crisp, my slacks freshly pressed. Not for a funeral, not for court, not for anyone's approval. Just for me. I walked the block and a half to the shelter. No reporters, no children. Just the gentle buzz of the town moving around me, dogs barking, a lawnmower humming in the distance, someone playing jazz from a porch 2 streets over. June met me at the door. She smiled, arms open. We finished the upstairs room. Come see. We climbed the stairs, the same ones where Henry used to carry Emily when she fell asleep in the car, where Thomas used to sit and tie his shoes so slow on the first day of school, where Nathan once slipped and cried like he'd lost a limb but forgot it all an hour later. This house was memory. And now, it was new. The room was painted warm yellow, with white curtains swaying in the breeze, a small bed, a writing desk, a soft chair in the corner. It smelled like lavender and wood polish. It's the quiet room, June said, for the ones who need a place to think, to breathe, to be alone, but not forgotten. I didn't answer. I just placed my hand on the windowsill and looked out, and for the first time, in what felt like 100 years, I didn't feel watched. I felt witnessed. Later that day, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Emily. I sat on the back porch of my apartment, opened it slowly, and read, "Mom, I didn't understand what I was doing. I thought I was helping. That's not an excuse. You were right. I was selfish. We all were. I'm sorry. Not for the house, not for the money, for forgetting you were a person before you were our mother, and for assuming you wouldn't fight back. You did, and I'll never forget that. No signature. Just a line at the bottom. I hope you find peace in the home you made, with or without us." I folded it once, tucked it into the back of my journal. I didn't cry, not because I didn't feel, but because I'd already felt everything, and survived it. That night I lit a single candle, sat in the living room. No TV, no phone, just me and memory. Not the kind that slips away, the kind that stays. I remembered every sacrifice, every betrayal, every step I took to reclaim myself. And I knew this, even if my mind falters one day, even if my body forgets the names of streets, recipes, or people who once meant the world, I will never forget who I am. They tried to erase me, but I rewrote the ending, and now they will never forget that. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.